I'm going to start off by simply reading you the email. I'm going to read it verbatim, but I'm going to leave out the names and the specific schools because, listen, I don't want to create problems for anybody. Not just, at least not for the sake of creating problems. Actually, in this case, I wouldn't mind causing problems for the truly guilty, but there would be, unfortunately, some collateral damage to the truly innocent. So bear with me because the names and the schools really aren't that important. Because you know what, this story, just like most of the things we do, could be from anywhere in the country. All right, here's the email. Hey, Coach Tony, I don't know if you would ever want to get into this subject, but I'm in a situation that may interest your listeners. I've been a youth coach in Littletown, USA. I'm leaving out the name. I've been a coach in Littletown, USA for 13 years and a high school girls soccer coach for the last 5. The long and short of it is we had 2 varsity players who were having disciplinary problems in school for over a year, including drinking in school, skipping classes, etc. These actions resulted in multiple detentions, in-school suspensions, etc. This guy likes using etc. Anyway, as coaches, we were aware of the problems, but the girls were cleared to play and both made the varsity squad. As the season progressed, more detentions, more in-school suspensions were handed down to these players, but were always still cleared to play in most instances. A week before the state tournament was to begin, both students arrived late to practice after serving yet another detention and were clearly intoxicated. We deemed them, we meaning the coach and the assistant coach, we deemed them unable to practice and called in the athletic director, who removed them from the field. Both girls were expelled following the incident. I don't know about you guys, but so far this seems relatively uneventful, right? Well, here's where the twist comes in. Let me continue with the email. In both my review and the other coach's review, it was deemed that we had prior knowledge of these players drinking, and so we were both fired. I guess the subject for discussion is, where does the administration's responsibility to students begin and end? And where does a coach's responsibility begin and end? What's the lesson to be learned here? Are coaches just supposed to turn their backs on these athletes that have been failed by their schools? Whistleblowers beware. You will become the fall guy and the scapegoat if you try to do the right thing. Well, the question I got for you guys this morning is this, and it's the 2 questions that this coach asked, or I should say former coach asked, right? I mean, where does the administration's responsibility to students begin and end with regard to drug and alcohol abuse policies? And where does the coach's responsibility begin and end? Interesting questions. 855, hey, coach, is the studio line. I want to hear what you guys have to say. But I got to tell you, wow, when I first read that, I did not see that ending coming at all. I really didn't. All right, so we want to talk about drug policies in general and alcohol policies in general. And while we're waiting for your calls, by the way, I want to give you an update on a piece that I did last week. The world's a funny place. If you remember, Mrs. Hey Coach Tony was stressing most of last week's show because I started talking about how poorly my daughter's soccer coaches, well, at least 2 out of 3 of them, how poorly they handled our decision to have our daughter take a year off from travel soccer. You would think with all the stories I've done about burnout and kids quitting and all that stuff, a coach might understand when parents make a decision in the best interest of their kid. Well, anyway, if you didn't hear, my daughter was on a very good, very competitive 11-year-old travel team. She played there for 3 years, recently started asking, hey, can I miss this game? Can I miss this practice? So clearly no longer enthusiastic and passionate about the sport. Long story short, we decided as a family we're going to take the year off. I sent a very nice email to the coaching staff thanking them for their efforts over the years, for the training they gave her, etc. What annoyed me was that one of the coaches wrote back with a nice thank you of his own, but the other 2, who are both fairly seasoned coaches, completely dropped the ball, and they showed their true colors. One of them replied to my detailed email with a simple okay, while the other one didn't even bother to respond. Needless to say, I was upset. I kind of let them have it on the show last week. Like I said, Mrs. Coach Tony was stressing. Anyway, isn't it always amazing when cliches do indeed come true? In the case of one of these coaches who showed his true colors, this old adage holds true. When it rains, it pours. Check out this email that I got during the week after the show. Hey, Coach Tony. Sorry I missed the show last week, but I just caught it on YouTube. I was blown away with the behavior of the coaches in this case. What a petty, classless move on the part of the people we're supposed to trust our kids with. Anyway, I thought you might like to learn that the classless behavior did not stop with your daughter. If you feel like you got hosed by these coaches, then get in line, because it turns out the entire team, in fact the entire program, got hosed. Right after tryouts, it was discovered that one of the coaches, the one who didn't even have the decency to respond to your email, secretly brought his daughter to try out for another team. Not a parent, but the coach. Well, she made the team, and now it seems that this coach, who by the way coaches 2 teams for our town, is simply quitting on our girls and didn't even have the decency to give the soccer club any notice whatsoever so that they could at least get a head start finding a replacement coach for these 2 teams. What disturbs me even more is that I guess lack of integrity runs in the family, because the coach's wife is also the team mom. For over a week, we've been receiving obnoxious, passive-aggressive emails from her reminding us constantly that if we did not come to tryouts, we would not be eligible for the team. We must have received no less than 3 or 4 of these emails. How could someone be so bipolar, demanding the girls all try out when she knew her daughter was going to play somewhere else? I'm smiling, and I don't mean to smile, but in this case, I have to somewhat honor the wishes of Mrs. Hey Coach Tony, because I know all the people involved in this, so I'm not going to name names. Even though I would love to. I would love to name names. After all, behavior like this deserves to be exposed. And you know what? The idiots who perpetrate it deserve the humiliation that goes along with being caught and called out for being a loser. But again, I did indeed promise the boss at home that I would not, and so I won't. Having said that, let me be really clear about something. In a very... just to show that I'm just a normal guy like the rest of you all, in a sick and twisted way, that email makes me feel a little bit better. You see, up until I got that email, I was still under the impression that somehow, some way, the behavior of this, the horrendously indifferent behavior of this coach might have somehow been attributable to me and something that I did. It was eating away at me ever since it first happened. However, now that I have a clear conscience, and who knows, now that these people are gone, maybe we'll pick up soccer again. But all kidding aside, you know what's really sad about this whole situation? And this is the last word I'm going to say on it. I happen to really like that kid, their daughter. She's a great kid. And unfortunately, she is going to begin and continue to suffer the repercussions of her parents' lousy behavior. That's a fact. I'll tell you, I've watched this kid for 3 years. The whole family, unfortunately, is a case study in overbearing parental behavior, and it's now kind of come to a head. I could do a whole show on it, but I'm not gonna, because today's topic is substance abuse policies in our schools and our athletic programs. Earlier, right before I went on my last bit of the soccer rant, I went through that email outlining how a school took a completely laissez-faire attitude towards 2 students. They had repeatedly found themselves in trouble, both disciplinarily as well as with alcohol. When the situation came to a boil, somebody got fired. But it wasn't the principal, wasn't the athletics director. Instead, it was the coaches, who seemingly were just following the rules of the school and allowed kids to play when they were cleared by the school administration. I want to know what you guys think about the story and substance abuse policies in general. So give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. In fact, I believe on line 2, we've got John calling in from Long Island. So we're going to go to John. Hey, John, you're on Hey Coach Tony. How we doing this morning?
Good morning, Coach Tony. How are you?
I'm great. I got my my soccer rant out of the way, but we're talking drug policies here. What do you got for me?
I'm calling about the soccer thing.
Okay.
I have to tell you, last week when I heard you on the radio, I thought you were dead wrong about the email from the coaches. No one, I think you were expecting a little too much from the coaches. I don't know what kind of email you were expecting back from them, telling, I don't know, please don't go, or, But after hearing what transpired this week with the coach going to another team, and I guess I was dead wrong too, because I can't believe a guy would do something like that to these young ladies, at the last minute and I think leave everybody in the lurch. I think all everybody ever asks from travel coaches is that they're, number one, honest and upfront with everybody. And if there's ever a problem, you got to give them enough time to try to find another team. I do think still that you're expecting too much. I don't know what kind of email you were expecting back. I don't know if you were expecting a long story back, thanking you up and down about, about having your daughter play there, or just to thank you. We really appreciate your time and effort. She's welcome back anytime. That's something I guess I would expect more of. We had a great time. Thank you so much for spending your money with our organization, and she's welcome back anytime. But I think sometimes some of these coaches take it to heart when kids leave programs, and they do kind of get a little stubborn and be like, you know what? Go play somewhere else. I don't care.
John, I got to stop here. Did you see or hear last week's show?
I did hear last week's show.
Okay, so obviously you weren't paying attention, and the only reason I'm going to give John grief is because this is my brother John calling from Long Island. And here's the thing: there are 3 coaches on that team.
I know.
All right, so I'm going to remind you. One of them took the 15 seconds it took to say, "Thanks, great kid, we love her, hope she comes back," and that was all I was expecting, and I got it from one of them. So hang on, because now obviously you weren't listening, so I'm going to say it again. The coach who's been in this program for probably 20 years responded with, okay. If you're going to take the half a second to say okay, say something nice so I don't go bash you to other people. And the other guy, again, didn't even have the decency to email me back. And apparently we find out, you know why he didn't email me back? He was too busy carting his daughter off to another tryout while he and his wife, annoying soccer Nazi mom, were telling everybody, you better come to tryouts or you can't be on the team. Oh, by the way, we're leaving. 2 teams caught in a lurch. What the hell did I expect? I expected some common decency. I didn't want anybody kissing my butt.
In that extent, you're right. I was a little more upset with your take last week, not knowing much of the background that went on this week. To me, if I got one email back from one of the coaches, look, you can't make people do stuff that they don't feel like they have to. If I got one nice email back from somebody, I take the positive and move on. If people are going to be petty about this kind of thing, you can't change their minds. You can't change who they are.
Oh, I want to change their minds.
Hoping to find a better program or better people to deal with. That's what I would do.
Here's the thing, and again, John, the other thing that happened in the show is I said, we're not leaving to go play soccer somewhere else.
Oh, I know.
I could understand a coach taking that personal, even though that would be ultimately their failure and not my child's. But let's even say they want to be petty losers and get upset because we're leaving a program. On one side, doesn't make sense. On the second coach's side, it darn well doesn't make sense because guess what? You left to go to another program. I mean,
I would think there's going to be a lot of angry parents this week. And at least he could have had a meeting, sat down with everybody. Doesn't he have like a year and end of the year meeting with the parents or a sit down where he could thank everybody or explain what's coming on in the coming year? I mean, I think that's the best way to make the parents feel better. Thank everybody, and we had a great year, and, here's where we're going in the future, and there's we might have to start looking for another team or whatever, but I think...
Here's why that's not the case. Here's why parents are going to get upset.
You're going to get some responses you like, you're going to get some you're not going to like.
Here's why the parents are going to be upset, because, like I said, for years now, these 2 parents, not just the coach, but like I said, the annoying, horrendous, passive-aggressive soccer Nazi mom, these people have been over the top, psychotic about this program, as if it was their own. And by the way, most of the knucklehead lemmings in town have handed it over. Here, all right, it's your program because you have 3 kids that play in it. Here, oh, please, do whatever you want to do. And now they just completely drop them off the edge of a cliff. It's disgusting, disgusting behavior. And like I said, John, for a guy who shares the last name as me, pay more attention to my show, will you?
I'm lucky I listened to it once on a Saturday. But yeah. I'm telling you now, you can't. You're looking for satisfaction in an area you're not going to get too much from. Okay,
I know.
Be happy with the nice guy who gave you the nice email, who was respectful, and you move on. Okay, obviously some of these coaches have some issues about integrity and honesty and being upfront with a lot of people. But you know what? you try to be better, you try to move on, and you learn from what went on. That's what I would do.
Well, I appreciate that, John, as always. Say hey to everybody out in Long Island for me. Yeah. Hey, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, Adam and Josh, I'm going to try to get some of your thoughts on this story of the firing of these coaches. It is very unique. We'll get to your calls, and we got a couple of emails here as well. So when we get back, we'll hit drug and alcohol policies in our schools. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony. We air live every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. You can hear us on the air at 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio in New York and Connecticut. And if you're listening live online, you're at heycoachtony.ihigh.com. Well, before the break, and I was dealing with my brother John, who thought I was a little off the mark with my soccer rants, but we're talking this morning about drug and alcohol policies in our schools, and specifically how they affect the athletic departments. I read an email from a coach who basically followed protocol. A couple of girls with discipline problems as well as alcohol problems in school, multiple detentions, multiple suspensions. They kept getting cleared to play, and so the coach played them. When it became obvious that this was beyond the problem, the coaches got fired for following protocol. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but if you got some information or some opinions, give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. I'm going to get to some of your emails in just a second. But before we do, Adam, Josh, I don't know, you guys were paying attention to this story up front. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that, it's unfair to the coaches to get fired for, something that clearly is unacceptable to do in youth sports since, they are in high school. You would think that the school definitely has, a policy with a no substance abuse at all and not allowed, and that, the school would take action with the players and, not with the coaches.
Well, I mean, listen, there are as many policies about substance abuse in schools as there are schools. And, I know, Josh, you were poking around a little bit with some of these garden variety codes of conduct that include substance abuse. Quite frankly, most of them are just way too lenient. I mean, I'm going to get to some of my, Hey Coach Tony solutions in a little bit in the show. But the fact is, what most of these schools are doing, especially in the case of this school, which I almost slipped up and named, what they do does not work. That's a fact. So instead of simply losing two troubled kids who were multiple repeat offenders, sounds like they lost two good coaches, and it was their own decision to do so. Adam, you got any opinion on this?
Yeah, what was the athletic director and all this? Did he lose his job too, or no?
Nope.
And who was clearing these girls to play?
I would have to assume, only because I don't have the exact information, but you would have to assume if they're cleared, it's going to be some combination of the school administration and the athletic director.
Well, did the coaches go to the athletic director or any part of the administration before he decided to put these players on the field?
The short answer is yes, and I'm going to get to some details on that in just a second if the story doesn't turn your stomach enough. But I want to there are a couple of emails that came in, and by the way, like I said, I'll take your calls at 855-HEY-COACH, 855-439-2622. But I did get a couple of emails in here. In fact, one of them came from Doug in Chester. And Doug writes in, says, "Hey, Coach Tony, while I do agree that the school administration should have done more here, don't you think the coaches should have stepped it up a bit and done more themselves? Just because the school says the kids are cleared doesn't mean the coach cannot suspend them further or even dismiss them from the team. Kind of a cop-out from the coaches, if you ask me." Doug, I like you, and let me explain to you why. This was the first thing that came to my mind as well. Brilliant question, Doug. I researched the story enough, and we're kind of alluding to what both Adam and Josh were saying as well. Through several reliable sources, I learned that the coaches indeed wanted to do more. But apparently, and this is not confirmed, but I was told this, they met resistance, not only from the school administration, but from the athletic director himself. So to answer your question, these guys did apparently want to step it up and do more in terms of discipline. But like I said, the term was they were met with resistance from the AD and the school administration. And this is from more than one reliable source. Again, can't confirm for fact whether it's true or not. But can anybody tell me they'd be surprised if this was true? Would anybody really be shocked to learn that maybe one of the parents was an alumni? Better yet, maybe one of the parents was a significant donor to the school? How about this one? Maybe one of the parents was a close friend of the AD or the principal. Now, none of this has even been alluded to, but the bottom line is there are so many reasons why these people turn a blind eye. I mean, for purposes of this discussion around the substance abuse policies, let's just assume that it's true. This is the real issue in my mind. Schools in general are just too lenient on students when it comes to drugs and alcohol. And here's why it confuses me. This isn't bad behavior. It's not bad behavior. It's illegal behavior. So how can a school turn a blind eye or just give a kid a slap on the wrist when they are breaking the law? I have said this before 1,000 times. A law might make sense. It might not. But in either case, the law is the law. And if you break it, there must be consequences. And Mr. AD and Mr. Principal, if this story sounds familiar and it's your school, listen up. If you think in-school suspension or detention is a consequence, then you need to get your head out of your butt. Because apparently, in the case of these two girls, the numerous suspensions and detentions didn't make a dent in their attitudes. And look where it ultimately got them anyway. The initial message that this school sent them was just plain weak. And my guess is the students learned early, based on the leniency, these students learned early that this school does not take substance abuse seriously. And only really stepped it up when they obviously had no other choice. Because now, in that last case, there are 2 more adults and several students who clearly saw that these girls were intoxicated. And by the way, showing up loaded when you're serving a suspension for being loaded? Are you kidding me? This is alcoholism. This isn't a kid experimenting with a 6-pack. This is alcoholism. So AD, you totally crapped the bed. And you jeopardized the health and welfare of a young kid. This is one case where I'd hire a lawyer and try to get a lawsuit, endangering a child. Instead, what do? They fire the coaches. You got to be kidding me. Listen up, principals. Listen up, ADs. Doing the right thing and taking a stand against illegal activity that can be detrimental to the health of a kid is not your last resort. So start taking these policies seriously. Will you do us all a favor? Number is 855. Hey, Coach. It's 855-439-2622. Adam, Josh, did I answer your question with regard to whether or not these guys went to the higher-ups and tried to do more?
Yeah, I think it's inexcusable that, the higher-ups were, telling them not to do anything, and, it handicaps the coaches. I mean, they know what they want to do, but they can't do it because, the higher-ups won't let them do what they want to do. And it's not fair at all.
Josh, you are one insightful young man, and again, whatever your parents are paying for Indiana University is money well spent, because I couldn't say it any better. Actually, I can say it a little bit better. You're using college words. Let me give you some Coach Tony euphemisms here. The coaches were not hindered. They were neutered. They were as neutered as the stray dogs you see on those commercials, because guess what? If they drink and the coach wants to do more and the school says, no, you can play, you brought up a great subtlety. What kind of respect are those players going to have for that coaching staff? When it comes time for more discipline, for whatever reason, the AD in the school let these kids back in. Let's say I'm the coach and I say, for some other reason, you know what, you're suspended for 1 game. What, as a high school athlete who typically gets their way anyway, what's that kid going to do if the coach says you're suspended?
Well, it's exactly like you said with breaking the law. The law is the law, and what they did was illegal. And regardless of I don't know what their position on the team was, whether they were a captain or leading scorer or whatever it may be, what they did was wrong by the law and by school conduct, and they should be kicked off the team for that. Because I can give you an example with last year with Indiana football. DeMarlo Belcher, who is leading wide receiver for the Indiana football team, was poised. He was second in career receptions. He was set to break the receptions record in Indiana, and he failed the drug test. And regardless of his position on the team, whether he was about to break the records, it was his senior year, and they suspended him indefinitely, and he never played another game again. Which is what I think should have happened with these girls, because smoking pot, it's breaking the law.
And if they had gotten suspended for wearing the wrong shoes, my guess is these whiny little brats who used to get in their way would have probably just run to the AD or the administration and said, we're getting suspended. Help me out. That and again, very insightful also, Josh, because I think a lot of this, when we come back from break, there's another email here that kind of hits to what you're alluding to here. But we're going to have to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk more about drug and alcohol policies in our schools, and we'll take your calls at 855-HEY-COACH. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. We are live every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. And this morning we're talking about drug and alcohol policies in our schools. And in general, I guess what I want to know is, are we being too easy on our kids? Are we being too strict with our kids? Because I tell you, I got my own personal opinions about this, but we want to get yours as well. So give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. It's 855-439-2622. I told you before the break there was an email I wanted to hit, and I'm going to get it. It comes to us from Steve in Ridgefield. Steve writes in and says, "Hey, Coach Tony, I wish I could ask this coach how good these players were and what their place was on the team. I have a sneaking suspicion that these players were good, and that's why they were given such leniency and so many chances by the school and the coaches. If this school had integrity, kids like this would have been expelled long before this came to a head. By suspending them multiple times, they simply delayed the inevitable. Boo." All right, well, apparently Steve does not approve. Well, 855-HEY-COACH is the number here in the studio. And, Steve, I want to thank you for the email. I'll tell you, I don't have an answer to that one. And I wish I did, because I'd be interested as well in what roles these kids played on the team. And, again, I think Steve nailed one of the huge remaining factors in the failure of substance abuse policies. For a lot of schools, we always say, make the punishment fit the crime. The punishment fits the crime. Well, for a lot of schools, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. The punishment fits the starting lineup. Think about it. Haven't we all seen star athletes treated just a little bit better than the rest of the students? And I don't mean like the basketball players at Indiana. I don't mean like, the football players at Stanford. I'm talking about high school kids. We've seen athletes receive better treatment than the rest of the students. That's just a fact. So why should disciplinary actions be any different? If you remember a few weeks ago, we talked, and I don't mean to keep rehashing old stories here, but a few weeks ago we talked about the coach who trash-talked to the 10-year-old boys. During that show, I mentioned that probably during the preseason meeting, if somebody were to ask the club president, what would you do if one of our coaches trash-talked a 10-year-old, the answer would have been simple. They would have said that this sort of behavior will simply not be tolerated, right? Easy answer, right? And why? Because nobody ever thinks it's going to happen. Next thing you know, an old big-nosed Italian guy like me exposes you and exposes your club on the radio. And what do you actually do to that coach? Nothing. It's the same thing if you talk about any type of disciplinary policies in that preseason meeting. I'll give you an example. The coach says on the first day of practice or in the parent meeting, if a kid misses a practice during the week without a good excuse, you missed a Friday night game. Makes sense, right? Well, what do most coaches do when the star quarterback misses practice on Wednesday? I'll tell you what they do. They turn their head. They hope nobody calls them for their nonsensical behavior. So, Steve, I wouldn't be surprised at all if these were indeed talented players. Maybe that's why they skated by in cases where, in my humble opinion, they should have been delivered some hot, fresh, and quick Hey Coach Tony justice. You got an opinion? Give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. And by the way, this isn't like Trick cereal. This it ain't just for kids. Let's go back to something I've said so many times before. And this is very appropriate when it comes to substance abuse policies in schools, but it applies to a lot of other things. I'll give you an example. You want to stop substance abuse in schools? You want to stop drunk driving? You want to stop illegal firearms? Tell you what, turn up your radio and listen up, because I got the answer. Ready? Strike one, you're out. Strike one, you are out. Sounds harsh? You want to argue with me? I'd love to hear it. 855-HEY-COACH. Because it may sound harsh, but I tell you what. You ask somebody who's had a loved one killed by a repeat offender drunk driver, and ask them if that policy is harsh. Ask somebody who lost a loved one because they were shot by an illegal firearm. Ask them if they think it's harsh. Bottom line is, this is a problem that can and should be fixed. All we got to do as school administrators and athletic directors is to just take the bone out of our heads, stick them in our backs, and start making some tough decisions that are going to benefit our schools and our athletics in the long run. You got to break a couple of eggs to make an omelet. And by the way, these two kids, yep, you're the eggs. And by the way, you broke yourself. They should have broken you the first time you got caught with booze. Expelled, out of school, off the team. But think about my policy here for just a second. And we're going to go back to, let's say, drunk driving. Let's just think about this. If you knew, without question, that if you were going to spend a year in jail if you got caught driving under the influence, would you ever take that risk? I know I wouldn't. If you think strike one, you're out is too harsh, you got a better suggestion, give me a call at 855-HEY-COACH. All right, hey, intern, you go to Indiana, right?
Yep.
All right. Do your parents listen to the show?
Yeah.
They do? All right, well, I don't care. Listen, Indiana, pretty decent party school, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, good. Well, let me ask you this, because it's going to lead us into another major problem with substance abuse policies. Now, I know you don't drink, right? Because you're 18?
Yep.
All right, so you don't drink. But let me ask you a question. How would some of your hacky sack kicking, guitar playing out on the quad loser friends feel about this? Let's assume Indiana instituted a strike one, you're out policy. You're all at a party. You're getting shot down by hot sorority girls. You got your red Solo cup in your hand, right? And somebody's taking some pictures with their iPhone. All right? A picture of one of you doing a handstand beer funnel ends up on Facebook. School gets a hold of the picture, because most of you idiots will friend anybody as long as they have a profile picture of a hot girl in a thong. So one of your, quote, Facebook friends is actually a school administrator. And they just caught you, or your friends, not you, right? They caught one of your friends drinking, and now they have to explain to mommy and daddy that their tuition check was just flushed down the toilet. Now, honestly, and I'm going to ask TJ this in just a second as well, somebody from the administration sets up a false Facebook page, friends you guys, and you get caught drinking, and you now bear the consequences. How do you think those non-bathing, hacky-sack-kicking loser friends that you hang out with, how would they feel about that?
I think that they would think it's completely unfair. I mean, just from a typical college kid point of view. But I can tell you that at this school, they are very harsh with the alcohol policies. They have exercise cops literally at every corner. And they have some fines that I know of that are pretty harsh fines for if you get caught with alcohol or anything. They have a very strict judicial process, and they even have a probation process too.
All right, well, hats off to Indiana. Mom and Dad are probably proud if you're listening.
But as far with the sports,
well, hang on. I want you to hold that, because we have a college student in our midst. We also have a high school student in our midst. So we've invited TJ Fiorino in. The only thing he's going to say during this whole show. Now again, TJ, you're in high school, and I know you don't go to drinking parties, and that's good because you come from a good family. But let's say one of your derelict friends is at a party. There's a little drinking going on. And again, the principal of your school sets up a false Facebook account. And because he friended your idiot friends, because he put a picture of a bikini up there, they get caught drinking and they get expelled. How do you think your friends would react knowing that it was a false Facebook account that got him?
Well, agreeing with Josh, they would also think it was completely unfair because they didn't think that the principal would be the one to have the Facebook account. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it's 150% fair because, first of all, you shouldn't put pictures like that up on Facebook to begin with. And just the fact that you're friend requesting random people you don't even know is bad in reality. And if you're drinking while you're underage, first of all, you're stupid. And regardless, you should be punished.
Okay, I got you. Thank you. That's the answer every dad wants to hear. Josh, you were going to continue.
Well, yeah, the thing is, it's not just with, educational-wise or sports-wise, we're seeing this, like you said, with the principal, sneaking around and making a Facebook account. But it's also in the professional world with jobs. If you're someone my age or a college student or a high school student, and there's a picture of you, on Facebook drinking or doing drugs or something, and, a potential, boss sees that, you're not going to get hired. And you're not going to get hired anywhere because that's stuck on the internet, and that's proof right there. Yeah. And that stuff doesn't just go away if, you delete a picture. Nowadays, anybody can take a screenshot on a computer, and they can save that. And when you try to apply to more jobs, people are just going to send them your Facebook picture, and you're going to see that, you're screwed, basically. And
I think there's going to be a huge business evolving over the next few years of people that are going to be archiving all these pictures because people will try to get them to go away. But this is the one that always gets me. I hate it when students and athletes come back with, well, that would be a violation of my rights. It's a violation of my privacy. Guess what? Especially if you're a high school student, you don't have the right to privacy. Sorry. You just don't. You're participating in illegal activity, and it doesn't matter how you got caught. You just got caught. End of story. And we've done several stories on this in the past where people, they want to sue the schools or whatever. You're the idiot who friended the picture of a bikini not knowing it was a 60-year-old man.
Well, I just think about, like you said, these players must have been, two of the best players on the team. But let's take it. Let's say, what if it was one of the players that sits on the bench that, was drinking and they get kicked off the team, but these players don't? How do you think that kid's going to feel? And what if that kid went to administration? Would they listen to the kid? If they didn't listen to the coach, I would think obviously not.
Well, probably not, and that's one of the reasons why these people keep their fingers crossed. They hope that they don't get caught favoring the quarterback, but hosing the third-string punter. That's one of the real problems here.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I almost forgot a story that to this day still drives me nuts. You think this? You know what? I tell you what. We're going to go to an early break. When we come back, I'm going to illustrate for you all that this isn't just about stupid kids. It's not just about stupid coaches. Not just about stupid parents. We're going to shine a light on some real stupid administrators. I'm not going to name the names, but you're going to want to hear this story. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Now, wasn't that just a kinder, gentler Coach Tony on that last commercial? I love that one. All right. And by the way, hats off to the kids who are doing Let's Play It Forward. It's a very cool thing, and you should definitely go check it out. All right. Before the break, I alluded to a story that I love to tell, but it's a bit of a sickening story. So we're talking this morning about substance abuse policies, and along those lines, I was invited to address a prestigious group of athletic directors. These people were running the athletic departments at a statewide association of private schools. And when I say private schools in the Northeast, that means probably $25,000 to $35,000 a year for high school tuition. I was asked to come in and talk about this very topic, substance abuse. And I'm telling you, during the course of this speech that I gave, I can still see the guy's face. I just finished walking through my theory of strike one, you're out. This guy raises his hand, stands up, and says, "That won't work." To which I replied sincerely, "Why?" And he said, "Because if we kick a kid off a team every time they're caught with weed, we just wouldn't be able to field a team." There's nothing wrong with your radio because I don't know what to say. I'm as silent as I was that day. You see how this terribly weak attitude is being perpetuated? ADs, get a backbone. Again, this wasn't a student complaining that he or she shouldn't be allowed to smoke weed. This wasn't a coach who was complaining that someone just suspended her star player. This was the AD of a $40,000 a year school. And I cannot make this stuff up. And this is the reason we have a perpetual substance abuse problem in our schools and in our sports programs. Nobody wants to make the tough decisions, and they're keeping their fingers crossed, hoping nothing bad really ever happens.
That was probably one of the dumbest things I think an AD could possibly say.
If that was, let's put it this way, if somebody was filming the event, they would have had to destroy the tape, because how do you not fire the athletic director when he says something like that? If that was televised for some reason, that guy would have been destroyed. Their concern is these are rich kids, and so they're going to smoke weed and they're going to drink, and their parents pay a lot to go to school here. So what? Like I said, break a couple of eggs. I mean, the bottom line is it going to be tough in instilling and instituting a strike one, you're out policy? Maybe for a year, maybe two. But if the kids all know, especially if you're talking about dedicated athletes, wow, if I'm seen with that red Solo cup, my sports career for high school is over. That's a much stronger message than, well, the first time it's going to be a detention, the second time it's going to be a suspension, third time it's going to be double secret probation, and by the seventh or eighth time, boy, you better be careful because we may kick you out of the school, or we may not. Weak nonsense.
It's breaking the law, case in point. You got to be reprimanded for that.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was a situation, I think it was my junior year of high school, and I can tell you this is why, our administration is pretty damn good. I think you know that, Tony.
Yep.
But there was an instance where a couple of the, better baseball players on the high school team were at a party, and the party got broken up by the police, and, these players, were caught and everything, and it got back to the coach. And what happened? These players, they were great. This team was going, for I think it was their third consecutive sectional title, and these players were suspended indefinitely for what they did.
And that's why guys like Joe Wooten, and I don't mind saying this is where I'll name names.
Great coach.
Joe Wooten not only is a great coach, he is a friend of mine, and I am very proud to say I have never heard anything negative come out of that baseball program since he's come in, and he's just done an amazing job. But it's like I said, let's assume, and I'm not going to name names here because we're throwing a hypothetical in there, if the athletics director said they're clear to play, it never got there because coach just stepped in and said, doesn't matter what they're doing, you're suspended indefinitely. And that's what these other coaches, I believe, according to my reports, tried to do, and they were simply told no. And that's a real problem. And again, let's assume that happened in your school. The coach wants to suspend them. The AD says, no, they're clear to play. What do you think Coach Wooten would have done? He would have just sat him. Wait, you want to put him in uniform, Mr. AD? Just because you have no backbone doesn't mean that I don't. I'm going to sit these kids. And he would have dealt with the consequences. All right. Listen, if you want to add something else about this substance abuse stuff, give me a shout at 855-HEY-COACH. But I want to touch on one thing that was a story that kind of went viral this week. And if you got some opinions on it, let me know. I'm talking, if you've been on Facebook at all and you have any type of a sports profile, you've probably seen a video that's made its way around the world featuring a high school track star who, during a 3,200-meter race, stopped to go back and help a fellow runner who collapsed 20 yards from the finish line. Sounds in and of itself pretty compelling, and I think it is, but the reactions have been mixed, to say the least. And so when a friend of the show, Kirk Mango from Chicago, penned a piece this week, I read it, and I liked it, so I want to share some bits and pieces of it with you. This is from Kirk, and he writes for Chicago Tribune, rather. At first, I debated on whether to write a piece about Megan Vogel's act of character, where she took it upon herself to help an exhausted runner finish the 3,200-meter Ohio State Finals. My hesitation to post an article on this tremendous display of sportsmanship had nothing to do with the act itself, but rather the fact that it was being well publicized, and rightfully so. I just didn't want to become another loudspeaker drowned out by the multitude of media. However, as I read through several great pieces on what happened and watched the video of her uncompromising act of kindness, I couldn't help but notice reference to some individuals' negative, belittling comments. A little miffed, I hunted some of them down, and to be frankly honest, upon reading them, I was pissed. Now, Kirk quotes, these are things that were pulled right off the internet in response to this video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this girl, Megan Vogel, she won the, I believe, 1,200 meter, and her second race of the day was a 3,200 meter. 20 yards from the finish line, girl fell down. Instead of crossing the finish line, she went back and grabbed the girl and almost literally carried her across the finish line. You may think it's the greatest thing in the world. You may not. But some quotes that came up, and I'll use these as quotes. Hey, way to make a stupid, childish gesture showing you have no conception of what competition means. Well, whoever wrote that one, if you're listening, two things. One, you're an idiot. Two, it's not conception. It's concept. You have no concept of what competition means. Conception is what your parents should have avoided when they were making you. All right? So if you need a dictionary, look it up. Conception is the act that your parents should have absolutely avoided when they created you. Concept is what you're talking about. And by the way, it's not a childish gesture. Don't say this kid has no concept of competition. She just won the state finals in the 1,200-meter race. Another quote. While she probably had good intentions, the girl who had fallen was less than 20 meters from the finish. No need to act like this is the bravest or even most selfless act ever committed. I don't like the tone, but I'm going to touch that one in just a second because that one's not that far off base. All right, another one. It was a darn race, not life and death. Let the girl finish or crawl on her own or not finish. That would have been the thing to do. And C, a video I could respect. Instead, many are making this out to be like a soldier carrying the wounded back to safety, which is what this video implies. Wow. Haters. Just haters. I think there's one or two more. Actually, there's three more. One of them might. Well, here we go. Another one. Give me a darn break. And if you're wondering why I'm saying darn, it's because I can't say what the other people wrote. Both girls knew they were going to get major credit for doing this. Boy, I just hope that's not true. It was a televised event. I really hope that wasn't true. Another quote. She should have stood over her and began berating her to motivate her and get up and run. You can't foster weakness. It must be eradicated in order for humanity to regain what it's lost. Oh, by the way, this one is actually, yeah, that one, they tied their name. This was from the ghost of Adolf Hitler. We're talking about what the betterment of the human race? I mean, come on. Are you serious? All right, and the last one, which I have to read, because one of the things in the article said this is one special girl. And, you know, you have to, there's always a loser out there. And the quote is, sure, she's special. She should be in the retard Olympics. Now, that is not me saying that word. This is me reading an email. And I obviously think that that's a very inappropriate term, especially when you're using that term in direct reflection to the Special Olympics. I mean, come on. That's just out of line. But now, if you have any insights on the story, please give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. But I'm going to give you a piece of information here, or a couple, that people may not know. Megan Vogel did indeed win the 1,200-meter race. What they don't mention very clearly is, and they didn't do it on Good Morning America where the video was, it's been all over the place, in this 3,200-meter race, and in all fairness, it's not a bad thing, Megan Vogel ran out of gas. She ran a lousy race, and she was, I think, third from last in this race. So, in line with, let's not say this is the most selfless act ever committed, I don't disagree with that. You know, she turned around before she finished, but she would have finished like I said, 17th out of 20th or something like that. Now, doesn't mean it wasn't a nice gesture. Doesn't mean it wasn't a really good thing to do. But I can understand somebody maybe, I don't know, in a more polished way saying, hey, this wasn't the most selfless act in the world. It wasn't. Megan Vogel, I think she's a great kid and she did something nice. Tell me that she was just passing that girl and about to cross the finish line to win the state medal, and instead turned around and got the second place girl and carried her across. That's compelling. Let's call it what it is. We'll never know whether or not Megan Vogel would have done that, nor do I care. I'm just trying to somehow look at some of the haters and say I understand what you're saying. And in all fairness, guys, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but hey, Adam, I mean, seriously, how big a deal is it that this girl was almost last and turned around versus if she was winning?
You know, I mean, leave it to the media though to leave the most important facts about the story out, you know, and these idiots to not even know the facts. But yeah, no, I think it's a little, you know, I could see where you're coming from. I mean, she was basically almost last, as you said, so, you know.
Hey, if it was my kid, I'd be very proud of her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, the way you made it sound when you were reading it, I first thought, oh, was this kid in first place at the time? And they went back and picked the kid up. I had no idea that she was, you know, third to last place until you got deeper into the piece, you know. So,
and they didn't say that on Good Morning America, and a bunch of the other media outlets didn't really tell you much about, you know, what the state of the race was.
And it completely changes the story. Because do you think any of those commenters who were reading knew anything about, you know, her finishing that low? I bet
honestly,
they all assume, you know, that, you know, she finishes in first place and then she gave it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and like I said, and they all speak to the fact that she won the 1,200 meter first. And by the way, I don't want to sound like a hater. Like I said, if that was my child and for any reason stopped to help a fellow competitor who was hurt before they finished their race, I'm going to be proud. And, you know, and if I was the mom, I'd be all choked up. The mom, by the way, happens to be the track coach too. But it's not like she did a bad thing. Now, what we'll never know, and this is what stinks, and you hate to even mention this during a story like this, if for some reason she knew that it was televised and this was going to get her 15 minutes of fame, boy, that would just be so inappropriate. And I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I hope not.
Yeah, the way when she was interviewed, it was actually pretty compelling stuff. She was very humble about it. She didn't say anything like, oh, I was just so determined to finish that race, but when I saw her go down, listen, she said I ran a garbage race.
Yep.
All right, listen, that's going to wrap it up on another week of Hey Coach Tony. I got to get to the Boogie Down Bronx to watch the Bayside Yankees do some pounding on somebody. Tune in next week, and we got some really cool stories. We're going to start a new segment called What Would You Do? A la John Quinones. I hope I don't get sued for it, but tune in next Saturday at 9 a.m. for Hey Coach Tony. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Hey, Tony.
Yeah?
Let me just throw out one more thing before we go. That kid, DeMarlo Belcher, I told you about, the wide receiver for Indiana, 2 receptions away from breaking the record, suspended indefinitely. He was projected to go in the 4th or 5th round in the draft, undrafted free agent because of his drug use.
There you go. Hope you're rotting hell. Good weekend.